Welcome to Next Stop Apex, a podcast where we talk about transportation, access, and what it really means to get around in a growing town like ours.
Hi, my name is Isha. I'm a junior at Green Level High School.
And my name's Aditya Dava, and I'm also a junior at Green Level High School. Apex is changing fast. New neighbors are growing up, schools are expanding, and more people are moving here every single year. On the outside, the growth looks exciting, but underneath it, there's a problem we don't talk about enough: how people actually get around.
In Apex, daily life is built around cars. Getting to school, work, sports, grocery stores, or just doctor appointments usually means driving. And if you don't have a car, whether you're a student, a senior, or someone working long or late hours, your independence can feel limited.
As students, we feel this personally. Getting to wait tech classes, after school jobs, tutoring, or even hanging out with friends often depends on someone else's schedule. It's frustrating to want independence but not have the transportation to support it.
At the same time, traffic keeps getting worse. Parking lots are packed, roads are congested, and the cost of owning a car keeps rising. Gas, insurance, repairs, and even used cars are more expensive than ever.
Public transit could help with all of this. It could reduce traffic, lower costs, improve air quality, and give people more freedom. But in Apex, public transit is still limited, and there are a lot of misconceptions about who it's for and whether it's safe or useful.
So, in this episode, we're starting with the basics. What does public transit in Apex look like right now? What changes are actually being planned? And how soon could people realistically expect to see these improvements?
To answer those questions, we want more than opinions. We want insight from someone who's been part of the decision making process.
We spoke with our special guest, Brett Gant, a former Apex Town Council member who was directly involved in transit planning and policy discussions.
In this interview, we talk about the Apex Transit Prioritization Study, the Wake Transit Plan, new and expanded routes, safety concerns, student access, and how Apex fits into a larger regional transit system.
This conversation helped us understand how complicated transit planning really is, why progress can feel slow, and why student voices matter in shaping what comes next.
So let's jump into our interview with Brett Gant and take a closer look at where Apex's transit system is headed.
We want to get in depth about some of the sources like that you gave us and some of the sources that we studied as well. So, I guess I can start with the first question. So, based on the Apex Transit Prioritization study that you sent us, what do you see as the most immediate priorities from that report? And how soon could residents expect to see the changes?
Um, so the report, um, I think there was a calendar in the back of the report, the appendix, but so I'll just review what the findings were. One was to um, increase the frequency of our Go Apex Route One from hourly to every 30 minutes. There was a kind of a subpart of that was um, to uh, make the route a little more efficient in a way they can go downtown twice in the same, back and forth instead of only once. So those are 2 things with the current route, and then there was another route between Pleasant Park and, uh, the Costco area, and then there was a third that was, down there to the south where Wake Tech's gonna build their campus. So, um, it's a lot easier to, buy a new bus than it is to, like, build bus stops or, plan a new route. So the changes to the Route 1 will happen probably soon. Um, I think I read that we plan to go to the 30-minute frequency, I think in, like, next spring or next like, February, March of 2026. Um, the change in the route will probably be a little bit later. I bet you that we can get that done by maybe a year from now, end of 2026. As far as the new routes go, those are the bigger investments because there aren't currently any bus stops built yet in many of these places. And so, well, full disclosure, I am my first day off the town council. We had our the swearing in and the farewells last night at our meeting. So I'm speaking now as kind of a regular citizen who was formerly on the town council. So it's up to the new council to determine the priorities. But I've seen some early budget requests from the staff related to transit, and they're going to request. I think the number was $700,000 for the Route 2, the one that goes between Pleasant Park and Costco. And so I think what that means is, because our budget goes from is a long answer, sorry. Our budget goes from July is when it starts budget year. So between of July of 26 and July of 27, they will request and likely build the bus stops for that second route. So it may take a little while to build these things, but my guess, so I'll summarize. I think we'll have the frequency done by the springtime of next year, the the slight change in the routes by the end of 2026. And then I think by the middle of 2027, a year and a half from now, would be kind of the earliest we could expect that Route 1 or the Route 2, sorry, second route. The one for Viridia, down there toward Wake Tech, Wake Tech hasn't built their campus yet. Viridia is just now getting construction going on their development. And so that's going to be much more dependent on how well they develop, because that's really serving an area that's currently nobody lives there and nothing's there yet. So that will probably be 3 or 4 years in the future.
And with all that and the new Wake Tech thing being built, how do you think that's gonna change the public transit that you've, like, discussed and planned so far?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm a believer in that, um, a transit system is more than the sum of its routes. And so, yeah, um, my hope is that, we have the Route 1 now, and I mentioned the frequency and the rerouting a little bit to make it more efficient. And then the Route 2 is gonna overlap with that kind of in a different direction. I think I hope what happens is that the ridership more than doubles because having those 2 routes intersect, you'll be able to switch and go different places. And I think having a intersecting in ways that you can transfer and go to different places, I think will mean a much broader ridership, I hope. Um, the Wake Tech route you mentioned, that's gonna be a huge, destination for that bus route. Um, right now, my understanding is everybody, and I've heard this from, Apex Friendship, if you follow the news in Apex, there's a parking, shortage at Apex Friendship, and a lot of them mentioned the fact that they drive for classes or, like, they leave in the middle of the day from school to go to Wake Tech. Maybe the same thing for you guys as well. And so, um, it'd be really nice to take some of those cars off the road and people can take the bus to and from Wake Tech. And so I'm not sure we're going to get there with the first set of routes, but um, yeah, I hope that it becomes a more normal thing to go to Wake Tech and other places on the bus. And but um, part of that is you can build a little bit smaller parking lots. There's less traffic. So all these things are benefits of that. But so yeah, I think that'll be a big one. I mean, Lake Tech's going to be there. There's going to be the North Carolina Children's Hospital. You may have seen that news story. That's going to be one of the biggest developments in Apex ever. And it's going to be kind of like a mini city right there. So the bus will eventually go to serve that area as well because people need to be able to go from the hospital to go shopping or to eat or whatever it is, and without having to drive necessarily. So, um, yeah, having these destinations besides right now, it's kind of like downtown is the main destination, town hall, a little bit like the Publix and Walmart, those kind of places. But you do have more activities in places like Wake Tech 'cause you're there for classes. And I think that will change the ridership quite a bit. as far as the demographics and the age, very much so because of it's all young people that are mostly going to Wake Tech.
I would say it's quite convenient as well compared to like having to take your own vehicle. And I feel like it's more hazardous too in a certain aspect because I feel like that's like a very controversial topic where some people believe that having public or like promoting public transit could risk like when it, a lot of like it could like lead to a lot of health risks and like it may increase I don't know how to say it, like criminal activities in some cases, but I don't think that's the case because of like I guess social norms. Like you're not no one's gonna be interested in doing that, and I feel like everyone is just gonna go along with using it because it's more convenient rather than
Yeah. Well, let me address that real quick. Yeah. Some of the negative feedback we've gotten about doing our first route is that we're going to bring crime from wherever. I don't want to say a place, but um, you know, it's a little bit kind of classist to say that, and um, it, admittedly, the people who need the bus the most are people who either can't afford to have a car or they're too old to drive or too young to drive. That's kind of the main demographics that we have. Um, and I think crime that may go up or down related to the buses is kind of unrelated to the bus themselves. And it's like this crime, maybe it's moving it around, maybe not. I don't really buy it. Apex, Cary, these are some of the safest places in the state. Cary, for example, has a much more mature bus system than Apex has, and the crime in Cary is not any different, higher or lower than Apex's crime is. So I don't really buy it, and I think that critique is more of fear mongering, personally. And I hope that people aren't scared to ride in the bus because of concerns about crime or people on the bus that may be kind of great, mentally unstable or whatever. It's meant to get people around to go shop, to go to school, to go to work, all those things.
Yeah. I think the positives of public transit, like, definitely outweigh the negatives. I mean, it does help a lot of people and, like, I mean, in the worst case that a crime does happen, I mean, that's not the fault of public transit. I mean, things just happen. But, um, anyways, I had a question about
Well,
how
you may have seen on the news, and this is probably something that's relevant. There was that woman who was stabbed in Charlotte on the light rail they had, and led to a lot of um, kind of political and newsworthy kind of things. And Charlotte just this last election in November passed a bond for a sales tax, kind of like Wake County has, to help fund a light rail that would go to the airport in Charlotte and also up towards like Huntersville in that area. And there's a lot of fear that that one event from this person that was, I think, mentally unstable and would have probably, you know, you can stab somebody if you want to do that, anywhere. Frankly, yeah. Fortunately, people don't do that because it's bad. But just because it was on the train doesn't mean the train was responsible um, for the person being there and stabbing the person. So, for what's worth, and I'll own it with this. One thing we've made sure to do with our bus stops in Apex, and I think a lot of places do this, is make sure it's well lit, that people feel safe because of that. Make sure um, the there's a shelter that they can stay out of the rain and out of the elements. But the well lit part, not just the shelter, but even the sidewalks that go to it, we want to make sure people feel safe because they're not going to ride it if they don't feel safe, and we want to make sure that's not a problem as much as possible.
Right. So okay, moving on. The draft Wake Transit plan that lays out a goal goes through 2035. So how does Apex fit into like the bigger regional vision?
Yeah, well, that draft has now been adopted, so you can call it that now. That happened at a meeting last month. Um, Yeah, so in that plan, you can go through it. One thing I've done, I always do when I look at stuff is I do a word search for Apex. Um, and it comes up like 10 times in the document. Holly Springs came up, I think, 3 times, so it's more than that. Cary was like 30 times, so it's not quite the same, but it's a good indication of how important the area is for in the plan. So Apex in the plan, there's a section where it talks about it being a sub-regional hub in Wake County. So right now there's the biggest hub is Raleigh. Cary is a hub between Raleigh and the airport and RTP in Morrisville. And what the plan kind of envisions is that we're going to create these little hubs with spokes coming out of the bus routes, or bus rapid transit, or even train, hopefully eventually, from these areas. And the plan envisions Apex being, after Raleigh and Cary, that the first kind of sub-regional hub for buses that are going to go to and from Cary, to and from Holly Springs, to and from RTP. And so I'm really excited about that because Apex is the third largest municipality in Wake County, so it makes sense that we're the kind of the next one that's going to have the hub. And unlike some of the other areas, like for example, maybe Morrisville, we have a really cohesive core of downtown that would be really popular for people to go visit using transit. So I think I did the math. Um, right now we have like 2 or 3 bus routes that are regional ones. One goes to Holly Springs, between Holly Springs and Raleigh, and Apex is the middle. And then there's one that goes from a new one that goes, actually, as of last month, from Apex Cary back and forth. That one went from just in peak hours to all day. I actually, with my family over Thanksgiving, we all got on the bus, went to eat in downtown Cary, the downtown Cary Park, and then came back on the bus. It's really nice. But the new or the adopted Wake Transit plan, I think, envisions like 6 routes up from the 2 or 3. So quite a bit more regional routes that are with this kind of hub that will be where all the regional routes and the local routes that I've been mentioning will all come to one place. And you can transfer there. Yeah, I'm really excited about that because it's going to make it a much more regionally and locally connected place if this plan is adopted and implemented.
Yeah. I guess like a follow-up question would be like, how will residents like be able like to track progress between like immediate changes like this?
Yeah. So one thing I've learned about being on the Apex Town Council is that things take a lot longer than you would think to build. Like this Route 1 that we did, it opened in 2021, and this is during COVID. It was kind of hard. All the transit got messed up during COVID. But we had been planning that for, I think we passed a document that described that first route in like 2018, and we didn't get started until 2021. Yeah, I thought it'd be like maybe 6 months. They could build bus stops and go. Problem is, it takes a while to get the bus stops. A part of that is because you got to get the easements from some landowners sometimes to be able to, go beyond the sidewalk to making a place for a shelter and bench. Um, so as far as tracking this kind of progress that maybe people feel like is too slow, which I do, and it's frustrating, but there is a website, I can send you guys the link, that is just for transit in Apex, and that will describe some of the upcoming, if we're doing some planning sessions, upcoming changes to the bus service. That's where you can find that all about what's going on in Apex. If you're talking about the Wake Transit plan and the kind of the broader um, transit changes, that one's a little bit harder because um, people aren't used to going to like the Wake County Transit um, plan page because they're used to looking at things in Apex or Cary. Because most people think about themselves as living in a municipality first and then the county second, in my experience. And so um, I suspect that the Apex plan will have some links to make it easier for people to see what's going on, track the progress for the Wake County stuff. But mostly what you're gonna probably see is, um, hopefully big announcements that says, "Okay, the Apex Route 2 is now open," and, there'll be a ribbon cutting. We had that actually for the first route, and that was really fun. We took a we took a ride around the entire route, the elected officials did, and, was and tried to promote it that way. So, probably what people will see is on social media or the town website, these announcements that it's open. It may go from them not knowing it's even happening to like it's open because they're not really paying attention. Most people are to what's going on in this topic area, but we're hopeful that they see the announcements. Another thing that we often will do is um, ask the businesses that are nearby the routes to put out signs or put out the guides that show what the route stops are in their window. I know when Route 1 opens, maybe a third of the businesses in downtown APEC had a poster in their window advertising that starting. So, trying to get the word out. People get information from all these different ways, and I know, um, like my generation is I guess the Instagram one. You guys are the TikTok and Facebook used to be when I was in college, but now it's only like our grandparents that have it. So, we're trying to use all those different methods because the bus is used by all different ages and people, and so as many ways as possible, we try to advertise it. But I'll admit that we don't do a very good job of that because it is hard to reach all these different populations.
Yeah. I feel like the population is growing constantly. There's a lot of urban development going on.
Well, there's that too. I mean, people are new here oftentimes, and even if we like that, the study. Sorry, I interrupt you, but like that's a study that we put out. It kind of lays out what we're going to try to do. Um, if you move here tomorrow, you're not going to be aware of that study, and you're going to be, you know, say you bought a house and you're getting everything ready, and all of a sudden you're like, "Where's the bus? Where's the bus? Why isn't the bus coming to nearby my house?" And but honestly, seeing the bus like when that first route opened, I was so happy because it finally was there in operation, but also people were seeing it on the road. And so that's another thing too is like seeing it in action and seeing it go by your house or your neighborhood every day is really a way you can know for sure it's happening. And see, and people look it up, be like, oh, what is that bus that's going by? And do it that way. So yeah, sorry, go ahead with the question though. You're mentioning new people and everybody, a lot of people here are new. It's a very dynamic place in that way.
I obviously there's like new students even on my bus with the back of my community being built and there's new houses and new like sales going and everything. And so I do understand their struggle of like having to walk that far because we get off at like the same bus stop, but I'm over here. Mind you, it takes me like 4 minutes to walk to my house. Not that bad, honestly. But like it's not as close and it wasn't as convenient. And I remember when I was in freshman year, like 2, 3 years ago, I like it would be at the very front of the community, and then I would have to walk even further down to get to my house. Until like at least these students don't really have to deal with that. It has gotten better for sure.
It's
Re-
it's funny you say this because the transit community struggles with um how far they will assume people are going to walk. Like, so if you don't have a car, you're gonna walk a mile to get to a bus, right? I mean, unless it's like pouring rain or super hot, like you're gonna walk if you 'cause you have to use it. But most people around here, have cars. It's more of a choice. They can do the bus or the thing. And um, I think in those situations, transit planners really have to narrow that distance to say what they'll walk. I think we used to assume like a half mile, which is like a maybe 10-minute walk, or if you're strolling, it's 10 minutes. If you're walking fast, it's maybe 8 minutes. Um, I think we assume now that really it's more like a quarter mile, which is like a 4-minute walk, like you said. And any beyond that, people just aren't used to walking that much, frankly.
Yeah, I could
So,
definitely agree.
but we got to kind of plan for that and that's where the micro transit, which I'm not sure how much you gonna get into that in your presentation, but Holly Springs is going entirely with this micro transit model, which is not a fixed route. It's people requesting it on an app, kind of like an Uber or Lyft, but um, kind of a public version of those things where it's gonna come to their house and it's gonna take them to the place they wanna go. And that's really nice. The problem is you can't scale that very easily up to a big population. So it can work for Holly Springs. Apex is 80,000 people. It's probably too big for you need like 20 or 30 of these buses to do that kind of service effectively. So, but yeah, I think we're more in the quarter mile range of willingness to walk. That's what we're assuming now because we know people like where I live. There's a pool. The neighborhood pool is nearby, and the furthest house away is probably 5 minutes walk. And people drive and park at the pool all the time, even on nice days. Drives me nuts personally, but it's the reality of people's behavior. I think in our area when they're used to being in their car all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think, I mean, honestly, the walk isn't the problem at all. I feel like the students that do have a lot of stuff to carry with them, when it coming back, I think that might be their biggest issue, which is why.
Yeah, and with buses, a lot of times if they're getting groceries,
Mhm.
it's heavy. Same kind of thing, it's really a pain in the butt to walk a half mile with groceries. In a lot of big cities, they have like the little carts that they bring to the grocery store. That's not really how it's not very common around here. And so most people are carrying them in bags and carrying heavy groceries a half mile in a bag. It's hard. And a backpack's the same kind of thing. You got all these books in there. And so I get it. Like, and that's why we try to be accommodating to the desire for these short.
Looking ahead, are there any regional transit connections you think Apex should prioritize, especially for students or young people who don't have access to a car?
Yeah. Well, you saying that, I mentioned I went to UNC and um, one of my areas of feedback I gave to the weight transit plan was um, it didn't really look at beyond Wake County very much. And I was thinking about the demand that there might be in the future for places, and I was like, I think in the future we're gonna want a bus that goes between Pittsboro and Apex, and Pittsboro and Chatham County. And part of that would be you could do it. Wouldn't be like every 30 minutes or 15 minutes because not that high demand, but let's say every hour you have a bus. It takes 30 minutes to get to Pittsboro. Then you go and maybe that same route, that same bus goes up to Chapel Hill from Pittsboro, on 15501. And something that would go to and from Apex to Chapel Hill through Pittsboro, I think would be popular with people. And that would, college kids, it's kind of far away, but they could theoretically live at home in Apex and go to college if they don't want to stay in the dorm. That's probably too far away for most people, but maybe come home to see their parents from college without having a car. Like when I was a freshman at UNC, I didn't have a car. And so I was kind of stuck using the buses or getting friends to drive me. So if my parents live in Apex and there was a bus that would go to and from Chapel Hill to Apex, I would ride that. And I'd love it. So, um, I think, um, the regional places like up to Durham for Duke and Chapel Hill for UNC, um, it'd be really nice if we're connected there to those places too for the college kids and their parents.
After listening to this interview, it's clear that public transit in Apex isn't just an idea or a future goal. It's something that's actively being planned, debated, and slowly built.
One of the biggest takeaways for us was how long change actually takes. From planning studies to budgeting, building bus stops, and coordinating routes. Progress can feel slow, even when people are working hard behind the scenes.
But slow doesn't mean unimportant. The changes discussed, like increased bus frequency, new routes connected to major destinations, and long term regional connections, could seriously change how people move around Apex.
For students especially, this matters. Rising costs, limited independence, packed parking lots, and delayed access to cars all point to why public transit isn't just helpful, it's necessary.
The interview also challenged some common fears around public transit, especially concerns about safety. What we heard made it clear that those fears are often based on misconceptions, not reality.
At its core, public transit is about access. access to education, jobs, healthcare, and community spaces. When transportation is limited, opportunities are limited too.
Apex is growing, and the choices being made now will shape what kind of town it becomes. One that's built only for cars, or one that works for everyone.
In our next episode, we'll look at how other communities have approached transit and what Apex can learn from them.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next stop.